Hello. I've been reading about Carl Jung in this book called The Essential Carl Jung, and I find it fascinating and I want to share some of the information. First, I want to talk about the introvert and the extrovert. The introvert is somebody who considers themselves before anything else. Their mindset is, how does everything affect them? That's the way that the introvert is. If it gets to be too extreme, the introvert will see too much of a separation between themselves and the world because they don't feel like they're a part of it. And then they lose the fact, they don't realize that they can affect the world, because there's too much separation. Isolation can become of it. While the extrovert, on the other hand, considers the external world, Jung refers to it as the object. The extrovert refers to the object first and foremost. So it's what is the world, what is outside, and they might even kind of they get so involved in the outside, they might even lose who they are, or they don't consider themselves so much. They're just considering others. It's all about the other person, for example. Okay, so here's the story that's written in this book. It's an introvert and an extrovert, and they're hanging out together on top of a hill, and there's a castle at the bottom of the hill. The extrovert says, let's go to the castle, it'll be so much fun, right? And then the introvert is like, oh, I don't know if we should. So the extrovert is engaged and excited, and he's probably, in the book he says, he's probably thinking about this magical adventure and all these fun things and blah blah blah, and it's gonna be fun. And then the introvert's probably thinking about there's gonna be guards and there's gonna be obstacles, and so he doesn't want to go through it. Okay, but eventually the extrovert's like, let's go, and all right, fine. So they go. Okay, so we go into the castle, and when they get there, it's it's kind of abandoned. There's not really hardly anything there, and so the extrovert's actually disappointed by this. Right? He's like, oh, there's not anything here, but there are actually some manuscripts that are there, some reading material, which totally excites the introvert. Now he's excited, and so now the introvert takes the manuscripts and sits down and reads, and now he's happy, right? And the extrovert, the way it's written, the extrovert's not happy and he wants to go, but the introvert is happy and wants to stay. That's how I took it in terms of the emotional level. But the significance is that they've switched roles. So now the introvert has taken something from the outside. He's taken the outside world, and now he's excited by it, which is kind of the idea of the extrovert, who focuses more on the outside, world. I'm talking with my hands, here we go. Okay, so the introvert kind of becomes extroverted in that regard. Okay, and I'm going to move to the extrovert. Now, he is not excited by the external world anymore, so it's as if he's turned introverted and he's thinking more about himself, and that he's not actually enjoying himself in this case, right? So then the idea is that even though the introvert becomes extroverted, it's not the same as an extrovert, right? Because the introvert takes the external world, he takes the transcripts and he reads them and he's excited and he brings it now into his world, which is still actually kind of introverted. Right? And then the extrovert, who wasn't happy with what he found, becomes sort of disconnected, sort of into himself, which is like the introvert, but it's in a different way. So here's the thing, though, about this story, and I want to even keep talking probably more about the extrovert, is that it seems like the story ends there. But to me, it seems like in that case, the introvert wins, in a sense. But really, why doesn't the extrovert decide to go explore on his own? Why doesn't he decide to go walk around the castle or go outside or create his own adventures? And he would do it probably on his own. But I don't think even Carl Jung would say the extrovert needs people. I think it's just that the extrovert needs external stimulants to be excited. He's really focused on the outside world. So let's imagine, So now I'm taking the liberty, this is totally my own doing, I'm pretty sure that's where the story ends in the book, but I want to go a little bit further and say, what if the introvert stays inside and reads, and he's totally into it, right? And then the extrovert goes outside and walks around and has his own little adventure. Okay? So they're each functioning as sort of more of their essential selves. Perhaps Jung would consider that to be their personas, or their ego, or their conscious self, right? Which is the ego in his definition. So let's say they both get to fulfill their conscious selves and they both get to have a nice time. Well, I think something that's really incredible about the fact, actually he doesn't even mention it, is really they wouldn't ever even had the adventure if it weren't for the two of them to be together. Well, at least in the introvert's case, right? Because the extrovert wants to go. Maybe he needed actually someone to go with. Maybe he needed that. Let's go together, let's go, let's go. Maybe he wouldn't go on his own. While the introvert didn't really want to go, but he got pushed into going. So they got to have this adventure together because of their differences brought them together. And if the extrovert was one to be able to be on his own, which could contradict being an extrovert, I'm not sure, they could potentially have created a really grand adventure for the two of them at this castle. So the last thing before I go, the reason why I think this is really special is because if that were the case, where the extrovert has a nice time walking around being adventuresome, and the introvert has a great time reading these old manuscripts of the ancient castle, then what they have done is probably raise their own vibrations, raise their own happiness level, their own joy, their natural essence was able to be increased, and yet they did it together. And not only did they do it together, but they actually, in the imaginary case, created space. They created space for the introvert to be revolving in his own little world inside, and the extrovert to be roaming in his own world outside, but with such a great connection of this castle and this excitement, but space between them. I think that is what would make that situation really special, and I think that is a really special way to live. So everybody, ideally, is revolving in their own world, but we're able to have space between us, because space stretches attachment so that we may have healthy relationships. We don't want any of this. I'm not supposed to do this.